You about the big beautiful bill, but I want to talk to you instead of all of the politics going around it. I want you to understand what we are facing right now. What we are facing right now is collapse of our economy. Collapse. They will say that what's coming is a collapse that is going to be worse than 2008. I believe, and I could be wrong. Remember, I'm a optimistic catastrophist. I believe that. It doesn't have to be this way, but we are looking at losing the dollar, and it's going to happen fast. How do people go bankrupt? Over a long period of time, and then all of a sudden. And the all of a sudden part is coming our way. Now, the majority of Americans feel that the country is headed in the right direction, and I believe it is. But what we're looking at is a really difficult situation. So let me ask you, how did we become the world's leading economy? What did we have that others didn't have? Because it was very easy. And I want you to make a checklist in your own mind. This is what we used to have. We had cheap energy, cheap labor, educated labor. We had small business entrepreneurs. We had individual inventors that were in their garage or their barn. We had ingenuity. We had low regulation, a cohesive society that was built around stable laws and a stable government. That's what it took for us to become the leader of the world. Now, let's go through those and see how many of these we have or are on the road to repairing. Cheap energy. Yes, I think we didn't have that, but yes, we are doing it now. Cheap labor. I don't know how to do that one. Educated labor. Well, as soon as we get rid of all of the DEI crap that's going on, yeah, I think we could maybe re-educate ourselves. Small businesses. No, small businesses are being choked by taxes and regulations. Individual inventors. Not really. Everything's being gobbled up by big ed and big government. Ingenuity. Well, ingenuity happens when you don't have DEI, you don't have all of these things, regulations, and when you have tax cuts and people realize I can do this and I can actually make more money and I can get ahead. That's when ingenuity, in America at least, goes on, and I don't think we're there yet. Low regulation. No, the answer to this is not in the big, beautiful bill. The answer to this is in the REINS Act, and you will see by the end of this monologue that is the most important thing we could do. A cohesive society? I don't know. That's our job. Are you feeling like you're making inroads on that one? And stable laws and government. Well, that is the DOJ. That is the FBI. That is restoring trust in our institutions. Are we doing that? Well, I think this is one of the reasons why people think that we are, on the right track because, yeah, we're starting to see it, but we're making some real mistakes there as well. And that has to happen. That's why Donald Trump, if you look at these, you can understand why Donald Trump has the agenda that he has. He's got to repair these things. Now, the old way of fixing an economy, because you are now in trouble, right? We know that the business in America is not good. The dollar is not good. Our debt is not good, but people don't really understand why it is so bad. Well, let me show you. Remember, I told you at some point, it was right after 2008, I said they're going to start printing money. And they're going to tell you that they're not printing money. They're digitizing money. And everything I said that they would do, and they denied that they would do, they did. And I said that would lead to inflation, which it did. Our government debt would explode, which it did. And our dollar would lose value and eventually lose its place. They would start to downgrade our dollar status, which they are doing now. And then eventually we lose the reserve dollar, the currency for the reserve. And everybody said that would never, ever happen. And now look at where we are. Okay. In the years when I was growing up, how did you fix an economy? Well, the government could step in and they would cut taxes. But when they cut taxes and not cut spending, that increases debt. Then you have the Fed lower the interest rates. That helps people have cheaper money to be able to take loans and start businesses, et cetera, et cetera. But instead, what our people did is they just gave zero interest rates. So all of the big corporations just took on all kinds of debt, but they didn't have to worry about it because they didn't have any interest payments. So they just took on all kinds of debt. That inflated our dollar. By pumping all of that money in, it inflated our dollar. So if you lower the interest rates, you have debt. You have things like QE, quantitative easing, which puts debt on the Fed. And you have inflation, which is our biggest problem. Then the other thing you would do is you would do a stimulus package. Have you noticed that this is the first time in American history, this administration that I know of, that nobody's talking about a big, beautiful stimulus package? Why? Because a big, beautiful stimulus package, that doesn't work anymore because all it's doing is adding money to the debt. And then the last thing you would do if you were a conservative is you would cut regulation. Now, we can't do tax cuts, he's doing, but is he doing the tax cuts in a way that he's just holding the tax cuts, right? We're not getting new tax cuts. Why? Because it will increase the debt. So we're doing the same tax cuts, just making them permanent. So your tax is not going to change. That does not help spur the economy, but it does help stabilize the economy. But he is then take taxes, and he is saying, hey, no tax on tips. He's giving tax cuts to the people at the lowest level of the economy. That's not going to spur on the economy. However, because of all the other problems, it's really important because the people at the bottom of the ladder are really struggling, and they have to have relief. So a way to do that is give them tax cuts, some sort of tax relief, because you can't do a stimulus package. So let's try this and hope that people spend that money wisely. Okay. The other thing that you do when you have a troubled economy like we have had in the past, and we do now, is you look for a black swan event. You look for a game changer out on the horizon, something that is going to change everything. Sometimes that's war. Sometimes that's an invention. But what will change everything to refigure the economy? Okay, so now let me tell you why the president is doing what he is doing with a big, beautiful bill. Everybody is arguing that we have to cut the deficit. Everybody is saying there's no debt reduction here, and we have to have debt reduction. That is great, and you're right. We absolutely do. I am with you 110%. We cannot continue spending this way. Now, let's look at the other side. Why wouldn't you cut the debt? Well, there's a couple of reasons. You don't think it's a problem. Nobody with a brain doesn't think it's a problem now. And that may explain a lot of what's happening in Washington, because I'm not sure. They may be sharing one or two brains between the whole lot of them in Congress. But you know that this is a problem. Okay. So you don't care that it's a problem. That's another one. You don't care that it's a problem. You just think it will go on forever, and the sun is shining right now, so I'm just gonna keep spending, and I'm just gonna put my head in the sand, and it doesn't matter because the United States is an oppressor anyway, and yada yada. Whatever your reason is, you don't care. You recognize the problem, but you don't care. That's the second reason. There is another reason why not to cut the debt. And it is one that is very hard for Americans to understand. But I take you back, if you're my age, to Ronald Reagan saying, when this debt gets to a point to where we are spending more on interest than we are on our national defense, there will be no good options left. We are here. There are no good options left. The other reason why you don't cut the budget, you look for ways to spur the economy on. You don't cut the budget, at least radically at all, because right now, you ready for this one? It's not going to improve your mood. The U.S. government and the budget, what we spend every year, now accounts for 25% of GDP. So if you want to cut the budget, let's say we just cut it in half, which Coolidge did. That means that we take 12 cents out of every dollar that is being spent and used in America. We take 12 cents out of the economy. Now, we're going to have to do it at some point, but how are you going to do that because that'll hurt the GDP? You will reduce the GDP. Once you reduce the GDP, then you have problems again with the budget, the taxes, and interest rates, okay? So you have to spur the economy on before you start dramatically cutting the budget. Now, if your mood didn't improve when I said your GDP is now 25% of federal spending, let me include the state and local spending. So when you include the tax money that is being spent now, your dollars that are being spent in our economy, and you include the federal government spending, the state spending, and the local spending, the good news is it might be at times as low as 34%, but it's much closer to 45% of our GDP. So almost half of our spending, almost half of our gross domestic product, meaning what we build, what we buy, almost half of it is being spent and purchased by our government. So you cannot cut the budget quickly, dramatically, but you must cut the budget or we collapse. Do you see what Ronald Reagan was saying? We're in a place where there are no good options. I'm going to tell you some things today that you're not going to hear anywhere else, that you need to hear. And we continue in 1 minute. First, let me tell you about Real Estate Agents I Trust. If you were launching a rocket into space, who would you want in the cockpit? You know, who would you want on the launch pad? You know, would you like a crew of NASA-trained engineers? Or maybe Elon Musk and a bunch of his people, or a lady who celebrates, you know, that she just learned what a planet is? You want somebody that's saying, I think all of these buttons here are just like a social construct. No, I don't want that. Okay? You want professionals, people who have done this before, people who focus on this all the time, people who know which switch to flip and what it does when you flip it. Most importantly, people who don't panic the moment something goes not according to plan. And when it comes to selling or buying a house, that's exactly who we want to line you up with. We're going to line you up with the financial equivalent of a rocket scientist, and because your house selling and buying is like a rocket launch. Don't pick an agent, you know, through a friend or, you know, on a billboard or anything else, or somebody you went to high school with. Find the real estate agent that you can trust, the one that we trust after we have vetted them over and over and over again. We started with the 500 best real estate agents in the country, according to the Wall Street Journal, and we built from there. realestateagentsitrust.com. Find the right one for you. realestateagentsitrust.com. 10 seconds, station ID. If we do not do the things we must do now, and I'm going to give that list to you here. In fact, let me do that now. The number one thing that everybody should be asking for in this big, beautiful bill is not necessarily more cuts. I'd like more cuts. But remember, we have to spur on the economy. How do we do that? We have to stabilize our laws, make sure that we are focusing on education. This is a longer-term thing, the education. Stabilizing our laws to make sure they apply to everyone equally. Do the exact opposite of what New York did when they went after Donald Trump's business, even though other businesses do exactly the same thing. You cannot have a growing economy if you don't have stable laws. So you have to strengthen the DOJ and the FBI. President Trump is doing that. You do have to cut, but you have to cut strategically. That's what DOJ was doing. Congress is not doing their part by even passing the minimum of what DOJ did. That's Congress's fault. Then you need the REINS Act. because the biggest thing that will spur on the economy that we can actually do, we can't cut taxes anymore. We can't cut the budget dramatically, which we have to do. So what do? We've already lowered the cost of energy dramatically. We're already getting foreign investment, which will help us reshore for our workers. That's longer term. We have the game changer. It's AI. Here's what we don't have. Low regulation. We have to have low regulation. So I want you to call Congress and the Senate and say, put the REINS Act in the big, beautiful bill. Because then you don't have to keep going over and over and again and saying, well, will the Supreme Court allow us to do this? Well, did Congress pass that money, et cetera, et cetera. It puts the power back where it belongs in Congress for all of these regulations. And it defangs this out-of-control, bloated government because it requires that Congress passes all of the regulations. Well, they're not going to pass a lot of them, are they? That's why they got rid of them. This is a Woodrow Wilson progressive tool. Get rid of it, make it an administrative state. The REINS Act is imperative. You want to survive? Pass the REINS Act. It is the only tool that we have that will have positive consequences, and I can't think of any negative consequences because we restore the power the way it is in the Constitution, and we cut all of the insane regulation quickly, which spurs on growth. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do. He's like, we cannot cut our way out of this debt. We have to grow our way out of this debt and then begin to cut. This is why the tariffs, this is his logic on the tariffs. I'm going to get foreigners to pay taxes so we can put that in. I don't believe in that, but he does. That's what he's trying to do. Everything he's trying to do makes sense if you understand the problems that we have. You may not agree with the solutions, but at least somebody is pursuing a solution. You know, there was a great article out today, and we put it in the prep because it is so important. It's from Victor Davis Hanson. And he says, look, historically, if you don't fix this now, historically, he said, from Greece to Rome, through the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, there are only 3 ways of dealing with unsustainable debt, and none of them are good. They're all civilizational killers. Number 1, the Weimar Republic did it in Germany. You pay back what you owe in cheap dollars. You inflate the dollar. And then you bankrupt what really helped cause the depression. You can do that. You can pay back the $37 trillion in inflated dollars. It's just not good. It is the Weimar Republic. Number 2, you can confiscate private wealth. People do that all the time throughout history. This destroys the legitimacy of the government. It makes private investors hide their money. Confiscate the wealth. You're already seeing leftists say that is exactly what we have to do. It never works. Never works. It didn't work in Athens. It didn't work in Rome. It didn't work in Renaissance Italy. It doesn't work. And the last one is the most drastic, and it's a killer too. South America has tried this one, and it's just renounce the debt. Just say, you know what, guys, we're not going to pay you back. All 3 of those are civilization killers. So pay attention to this because your lifestyle is about to change.
This is Glenn Beck.
We're going to talk about law and order in just a second. First, let me tell you about our sponsor. Our sponsor this half hour is the Byrna Launcher. Imagine this. You're out for a peaceful evening walk when suddenly you hear a loud flapping sound. You turn around and there it is, a fully grown angry emu, okay? Someone's exotic backyard pet. It got loose and now sprinting towards you with what can only be described really as murder in its eyes. You don't want to kill it, but you also don't want to get, Spartan kicked into next week by a 6-foot terror bird with a bad attitude. You know what I'm saying? Enter the Byrna Launcher, the compact launcher. You have been running with it. It's so small. It's enough to bring along on your run or your walk. And it's powerful enough to send an irritant cloud straight to the emu's fluffy nightmare face without doing any permanent damage. Because you imagine what people will say about you killing an emu? It would be very bad. Now, imagine that's a human being and it's a parking lot and it's at night. It's exactly the same thing. It's non-lethal, easy to use, legal to carry, built for terrifying moments. Humans or emus, doesn't matter. Do yourself a favor. I want you to go now to Byrna, byrna.com, get a free 5-year no-hassle warranty with every launcher ordered, and check out their retail locators for the nearest location offering live demonstrations, including Sportsman Warehouse stores, Byrna retail stores, Byrna launchers. Well, the head of Hamas, Sinwar, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, has just been killed. He's meeting with his 70 virgins now. I hope they're all ugly and complainers and very, very controlling. I hope they make Mrs. Macron look like a sweetheart and a lovely, lovely lady. Anyway, so he's out. We've been talking about what's going on in Congress now and the Senate with the big, beautiful bill. Let me switch gears here because I said one of the things you have to do to repair the economy is to fix the rule of law. We must have a consistent rule of law or we will not have an economy. We won't have a civilization. The congressman from Kentucky, James Comer, is with us now. We want to talk about the cover-up and the investigation that he is overseeing right now. On what happened with the autopen, what happened with the president, who was actually running the White House, and why this matters. He represents Kentucky's 1st Congressional District, serves as the chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, where he aggressively advocates for reducing waste, fraud, and abuse in government. Welcome, Congressman. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Your investigation has shown us now that there may be as many as 3, more than that, but 3 in like a little cabal that were kind of orchestrating the use of the autopen for key executive actions and pardons. Can you confirm whether you have any evidence identifying a person or persons?
Yeah, we have 3. We have very good sources that point to 4 staffers, most of whom no one's ever heard of, that were the ones who actually operated the autopen. Remember, even if Joe Biden was on the top of his game, and even if he were authorizing the use of his signature on an autopen, he's not the person that would take the document and put it in the autopen and press the power
Correct.
button. We've identified the 4 staffers. We're fairly certain these are the 4 staffers that actually put the autopen in operation. We're bringing them in. We've asked them to come in voluntarily, which that's the process to do a subpoena. If Thursday is the deadline for their response. We've given them a week to respond and lawyer up and all that. If they do not respond or if they say no, then they will get a subpoena the very next day from me, and they will have to come in for a full-blown deposition. We want to find out the process, who gave them the authority to use the autopen, who were they talking to. Then the next step will probably be the names, like Klein and the people, maybe Joe Biden, the people that are in the news as who everyone suspects were possibly running the White House. This is important because so much was done in the last 100 days of the Biden administration from an executive order standpoint.
Right.
They Trump-proofed the government. They Trump-proofed the government with the autopen. And then we all know about the pardons, but just the executive orders alone, these are given the Trump administration fits in court, like when he's trying to bring the federal employees back to work. The Joe Biden autopen signed an executive order in the end saying they could continue to work from home and gave them collective bargaining rights and everything else. These are issues that are blocking the Trump agenda in court and things that we think should be invalid because they weren't legitimately signed by the President of the United States. And furthermore, this investigation may reveal that the President of the United States didn't even know anything about these executive orders.
So I've heard that we have a whistleblower at a very high level of the Democratic Party that has blown the whistle on a little cabal inside the White House that actually, what I heard was that some people in the White House had figured out a way to monetize the autopen. Is any of that true?
We don't know, but that will be a line of questioning, especially when you get to the pardons. Remember, everyone knows about the pardons for the Biden family as a result of our investigation, but they pardoned thousands of people. Some of them were murderers and rapists. Some were legitimate pardons. But when you're talking about thousands of pardons, who vetted them? Who gave them the authority? Those and the autopen was used in every one of those pardons. Outside of the Hunter Biden pardon, it looks like the autopen was used on every single pardon issued by this president. And there's rumors that there were people that were monetizing that. I don't know, but we're gonna try to find out. But I'll tell you this, that a lot has come out in the last 3 weeks. We've been waiting on this. We've been waiting on this Tapper book. We have been waiting for this Tapper book for a while because we knew that he had sources inside the White House that spilled the beans on Joe Biden's mental incapacity. So this has helped fuel momentum for the investigation. More evidence has surfaced. So we're trying to go from there.
So, what specific legal or constitutional violations do you believe the autopen may have breached, and how serious?
Well, first of all, it's very serious because first of all, you have to physically sign anything pertaining to the law. I have to sign subpoenas. I have an autopen. Everybody in Congress has an autopen. You use an autopen to sign proclamations and mass letters and newsletters and things like that. But if
wait. Didn't we in 2000, I don't know, 10, Barack Obama, maybe 8, Barack Obama's in Hawaii, and it was the first authorized use of the autopen for a executive order or law or something. So did that not change? Was that a one-time only thing?
Our lawyers say you have to sign anything pertaining to the law. You have to physically sign it. If Obama had a situation where he was in another country and something had to go out, I don't think anyone would challenge that. But to use the autopen for everything for the last at least 100 days of the administration, when you have so much activity. This wasn't a natural disaster and you had to do an executive order to get food to people who were starving to death after a tornado in Kentucky or anything. This is Trump-proofing the next administration to where you can't eliminate the Department of Education because you can't fire those employees. You can't make the employees have to come back to work. You're giving them more rights to work from home. Where you've signed executive orders saying, you've got to pay the student loan debt off. I mean, the list goes on and on. And my whole family, they're pardoned. By the way, you can't prosecute them. You can't touch them. So. These are the kind of things. If I have a subpoena, I have to fly back to Washington to sign it, or we have to overnight it. I mean, there's a million things that you have to do and have to get it notarized and all this other stuff. This was not legal. There's no way these will hold up in court, especially if there's no evidence that Joe Biden gave the order to use the autopen, and we have found no evidence where there were emails or anything that said Joe Biden said, yes, I want to sign that executive order or I want to sign that pardon. Just go ahead and get the document and put it in the autopen. Remember, he spent very few days, the last 100 days, in the White House. He was in Delaware, going between his two mansions on the beach. He was not in the White House. So there's a lot of evidence that's going to be hard for the Democrats and their friends in the left-wing media to try to spin that Joe Biden was actually running the show. And if you're in the White House, if you're giving the orders, why not just sign it there? Why do you have to use the autopen?
You've sent letters to the personal physicians as well as multiple advisors. Were we going to hear from the physician? I mean, we all suspected the president was not actually running things. We have to know the real truth about his mental capacity towards the end, which would also strengthen the case that he didn't have any idea about the autopen. These weren't things that were coming from him. He was probably, like Edith Wilson did with her husband, shoved underneath a hand or shoved into the autopen and signed without him really being cognitively able to understand what he's signing.
Right. Yeah, and that's obviously why we're bringing the physician in. We have a lot of questions. We're going to consult with Ronnie Jackson. If Ronnie is available, I'd love to have him in for that interview or deposition, whatever it turns into, because he was the White House physician under Trump. And I think that he has a lot of insight. I've watched several of his interviews, so he knows exactly what's expected of the White House physician. I mean, this Dr. O'Connor, he better be on the top of his game, because we have his predecessor in Congress who's been very critical of a lot of the statements that Dr. O'Connor put out, praising Joe Biden and his health, and that comes out that he's got stage 3 prostate cancer, and they're trying to say, well, we never tested him for prostate cancer. I mean, that's just not. I'm 52. I get tested for prostate cancer every 6
year.
months. I mean, yeah.
So we're talking to Congressman Comer, who is Kentucky's congressman from the 1st District, but he also is the chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. The thing that I think most Americans want to see is not just the uncovering of the truth, but actually consequences. If this were happening, are people going to jail for doing this? We just heard from Jake Tapper's book again, just yesterday or day before, that they were calling themselves the Politburo. That there was a few of them, 3 or 4 of them, that were just saying we're running it now, if he's reelected, we'll still run it. That's not constitutional.
It's not constitutional. If I, as a member of Congress or chairman of the Oversight Committee, could put people in jail, I would have put some of the Biden family members in jail. We investigate, and then we turn over the results of our investigation to the Attorney General. So that question should be asked to Pam Bondi. We certainly hope that she holds people accountable. We're still optimistic that she will hold people accountable from investigations of the Biden influence peddling. We've Jim Jordan and I have led 3 or 4 investigations where we believe that people should be held accountable for things that were done in the last administration. So again, if I could put people in jail, I would do it. Of course, if the Democrats, when they were in charge of Congress, if Adam Schiff could put people in jail, he would have put Jim Jordan and Scott Perry and Donald Trump in jail if he could have.
Right. I mean, I want the system to work the way it should. I'm glad you don't have the power to put people in jail. I'm glad it goes through the DOJ. But the DOJ, if there are actual crimes committed, I can't think of a higher crime than usurping the power of the president of the United States and hiding the fact that he's not actually making the decisions or running the country. That is, in my view, that is a very high crime.
And it's the biggest scandal in the history of America. If you have 3 or 4 bureaucrats, like what Tapper is alleging, that were never elected, that no one's ever, I've never heard of them, and I'm pretty involved in things in Washington, and they're running the country. I mean, that is a bad deal.
Congressman, thank you so much. Thanks for spending some time with us and explaining what's going on in Congress, and best of luck to you. When do you expect an answer? They have to answer by tomorrow, before you subpoena them?
By tomorrow. If they don't, they know the next step subpoena. We've been very clear about that. So, and that's the process. So we're starting with them. We'll see where the trail leads. I fully expect every name that Jake Tapper has alleged in his book. We're running the country, as well as some others that many on conservative media suspect we're running the country. I fully expect to hear from them all over the next few weeks, hopefully.
Good. Thank you very much. Congressman
Thank
Comer
you.
from Kentucky. God bless. All right, let me tell you about Good Ranchers. Somewhere right now, there's a man walking a fence line. He is checking for brakes after a storm rolled through overnight. There's a woman who this morning is hauling feed before most people had even poured their first cup of coffee, but they were out. They were doing things. All these people, they're the people who raise our food, and they do it because something in them still believes in the value of honest work and doing the right things the right way, even when nobody's watching. The truth is, family farms and ranches in this country are disappearing. Our supermarkets are flooded with imported meat, boxed and labeled to look like it's from here, but it's grown and processed thousands of miles away under standards that wouldn't pass on American soil. And every time that happens, every time a local rancher can't compete, we lose a piece of who we are. We must support our ranches and our farmers. Ranchers and farms, they matter. They don't just sell meat. They're the source of 100% American meat if you get your meat from Good Ranchers. They also support the kind of America you still want to live in. So visit Good Ranchers. Buy your meat differently. GoodRanchers.com. Use the promo code Beck. Unlock your free meat for life plus $40 off. That's GoodRanchers.com. GoodRanchers.com. Go there now. American meat delivered.
Dumping DC's garbage while the swamp cries constitutional crisis. Beck is back after this.
You know, you don't hear much about religious persecution in conflict zones around the world these days, but it is happening, and there's a documentary that examines this in detail. It's called A Faith Under Siege, Russia's Hidden War on Ukraine's Christians. It's a film that looks at what was used to be called the post-Soviet Bible Belt. This is a rapidly growing community of evangelical and Protestant believers who become a prime target under Russia's expanding occupation. What the documentary captures is seized churches, tortured pastors, abducted children at these communities. They're struggling to keep their faith alive in secret in the middle of a war zone. The film gained exposure at the Museum of the Bible recently. Producers are looking to shed light on all of this and mobilize Christians to be aware of this and get your prayers and support. These are stories that don't typically get any mainstream coverage at all. The filmmakers set out to document what's really going on. And this is something where it's not just like, hey, they're telling you some stories third hand. They're there, they have the footage, they are telling you exactly what's going on. You can see this film right now. It's at faithundersiege.com, faithundersiege.com. Lots of resources there as well for you to help. And it's an important story. Anytime the Christians are being persecuted around the country, we've been talking about this for years and years and years on the program. It's faithundersiege.com, faithundersiege.com.
Tonight, my Wednesday night special covers everything we just talked about, the autopen scandal, why it changes everything, and I have a very high-placed source in the Department of Justice that is going to talk about whether they're going to bring charges or not, and what has to happen to bring this to a short order and ending.
Is it news there, Glenn, that Comer said they were waiting for the Tapper book to come out so they could get access to all the sources?
I think so.
I think that's pretty big. And again, it's another reason why I think like Jake Tapper's a part of the story, but not the story. You know, they have 4 cabinet officials who have given quotes about their lack of access to the President of the United States. How does the 25th Amendment even go forward when the cabinet can't access the President? This has got to be illegal. And, the book is the book.
It's
and
not
the author's
now,
the author,
but it needs to be.
Yeah.
It needs to be, yeah. All right, watch us tonight, 9 o'clock, only on Blaze TV.
This is Glenn Beck.